Welcome back to another episode of Practical and Prophetic with your host, Tara McDaniel, or you might know me as Learn with Tara. So if you're new, make sure you subscribe. Hey, how you doing? I hope you stay. And if not, that means you already fam. You've been here, so welcome back. Y'all, I'm finna get right into this, okay? Because I feel the Holy Spirit pressing me. Okay, he's pressing me. I wanna share a little bit about myself, a little bit of my backstory. If you've been following me on TikTok, then you know. If you know me personally, then you know. But I really feel a calling to share, right? To be really transparent with you about where I came from and where I am today, simply because I think that we need that, right? When you have someone of influence, you guys know that I have like over 150,000 followers on Instagram. Sometimes people can get really mixed up in seeing the platform, but they don't understand the story. They don't understand the moving parts behind that person's process to even give them that platform. That was a whole bunch of peas, but dang, I be speaking like that, y'all. Real talk, you know what I'm saying? But I really value transparency and visibility when it comes to any type of leadership. And I think that God values it, and I really think that it's super helpful. So let me just get into this without further ado, because I wasn't planning on it, honey. You guys, some of you may know that I grew up here in Dallas, and I went through a lot, right, in my childhood. One being bullying. I was deeply bullied for my skin color, dark skin, and that really was cemented in my spirit, in my head, and that played a key role in my insecurity, even growing up, in the lack of value within myself, just constantly hearing over and over and over again my skin wasn't pretty, that it was not acceptable, that I wasn't light skinned, just going throughout the years, experiencing that, while I was also experiencing some things at home as well, some very personal things that were very traumatic. Fast forward, I'm 14, I'm insecure, I'm dealing with things internally and externally. And I met this guy who was probably the most popular guy in the city and was wooed. Next thing you know, I'm pregnant. Pregnant at 14 after my first time having an intimate experience. That was definitely traumatic for me, and I'm pretty sure it was traumatic for my family. I was going to church at the time, and it was a lot of moving parts, like with the school I was going to and the church, and me being told I couldn't be a part of these things because of the way that it looked with other kids, school being separated, just a lot of things. And then there was so much going on at school alone. I mean, I had so many people coming for me, wanting to fight me behind this whole thing. And it was just a lot to deal with at 14. So the bullying I experienced, the things that I was experiencing at home, along with that, really set me up to be extremely insecure. Extremely insecure. So insecure that it spilled over in some of the decisions and choices that I started to make. One thing I did do is I took vengeance on my education. You know, I was challenged by a teacher who said that I wouldn't be anything. I was told by a family member that I wasn't going to be anything. That family member isn't here today, but I took vengeance on my education. You know, I felt like I had something to prove to everybody else. It wasn't even for myself. And I was like, okay, I'm going to graduate, you know. So I worked overtime to graduate a year early. I went to summer school. I went to night school, and I worked a job because I was trying to prove to other people that I could be more than what they said I was. Although internally I was still broken. And I do have to shout out my mom, my family, for being there, for supporting me during that time. I wouldn't have been able to do all of that, go to work, go to school and all that, if they weren't there to help me, and even friends at that time. But I moved into a place of like feeling like I had something to prove, to losing it all. By the time I was 17, you guys, I was literally working and hustling at the same time. And when I tell people about this side of me or that version of me, people are so shocked, because it's like, what, you hustle? Yes, y'all. Back then, y'all, they used to call me the Black Barbie, the hood Barbie. I used to run the streets. I was doing all kinds of things. Had an experience one time where I was robbed by somebody that I used to date. for a QP. Now, I ain't gonna break that down and explain to you if you don't know what it is. If you know what it is, then you know. It was for a QP, and I was deeply offended. I was talking to this guy at the time from Louisiana, and he was like, we about to go take him out. We about to go murk him. We about to go get your money back. Get either your money or those drugs, and he about to. That's it. That's the end of him. It was so crazy because the night that we planned this, and when I tell you we planned it, my boyfriend at the time was like, check everything on the car. Make sure everything is copacetic, that we don't get pulled over. We need to check the lights. We need to check registration. Everything was good. It wasn't even my car. It was my cousin's car. And we left with an AK-47 with an extended clip in the back seat. I was so disconnected from me in that moment. I completely was delusional. I was so just misguided because of all of the experiences that I was living with, and I didn't know how to release it. I didn't know how to live with it. So I became a version of myself that is somebody that I can't even relate to. I was so angry at that time. So we pull out. Let me get my little paper towel, y'all. We pull out to go and take this dude out. And as soon as we pulled out, maybe like 5 minutes later, we were in North Garland at the time. If you're in Dallas, you know that you don't want to get pulled over in North Garland because the ratio of minorities to the majority is crazy. And the police in Garland at that time, I don't know about them now. Excuse me. I don't know about them now, but the police at that time, they were very vigilant. They were very vigilant and could be violent. We get pulled over, and immediately the guy I was dating was like, Tara, you got to take this clip out this gun. As soon as we got pulled over, the guy I was with was like, Tara, you got to take this clip out of this gun. Like, this could be a life sentence. So I tried to pull the clip out of the gun, but by the time I put my hand on the clip, the police was already in the car with flashlights. And he was like, take your hands off that weapon and, put your hands on the dash. And within minutes, we were swarmed with so many different police officers, you guys. They separated me and the guy. And at that time, I was going to die by the code. It was going to be like, I'm not going to be a snitch in these streets. So I was so afraid. I was young, y'all. I probably was, at this time, I may have been like 18. But I felt like I got to live by the G code. When they separated us, an officer came to the back of my car with my purse. What I didn't tell you is I had a purse full of contraband, y'all. Hard, soft, dro, pills, all kind of stuff. And the police officer was like, whose drugs are these? And I was just like, oh, it was somebody who was in my car before me and my boyfriend. And he was like, no, you're lying. And I was just like, nah, that's really what's happening. He was like, nah, you lying. In that moment, I saw my whole life flash. I just knew I was going to jail for life. I just knew that if it wasn't life, I was going to be in jail for a long time. And here I am, a baby, living this adult experience, all this fear in my heart, trying to make myself be something I wasn't. But then I also was going to live by the code. So I'm like, this is it. It's over for me. He was like, what y'all doing with that gun? And I'm like, we taking it to my boyfriend's grandmother's house, blah, blah, blah. And next thing you know, y'all, he walks away. And again, there are tons of police officers out searching the car and, interrogating him. He steps away from the vehicle, and in moments he comes back with my purse, and he opens my purse and he's like, don't say a word. Y'all, I looked at my purse and it was empty. Completely empty. There was nothing in there. The police officer said, I'm going to take you to jail on these traffic warrants. I'm going to take this clip out this gun. I'm going to let your boyfriend go home because he ran the weapon here and it was good. And he said, I don't want to see you back in these streets again. So I went to jail on traffic tickets. My mom picked me up a day or two later, and you'd think that that would be enough for me to calm down, but it wasn't. Like, I had tons of experiences that were either similar, being busted by the feds for talking to a guy who was involved in that life, and God allowed me to escape right in plain sight, to being shot at, literally driving down 635 backwards with no gas after coming out of the club from a fight, and making it to a hospital driving backwards on the highway on E, being shot at. And God allowed me to escape that, to me, being introduced to music and rapping at that time, going to New York, running for my life the same night because I wouldn't oblige to do what some people was asking me to do. I wouldn't sleep with them. So I was put out, and that was a whole crazy situation. I was in Washington Heights. Anybody from New York, Washington Heights is crazy. And now I'm 18, never been to New York a day in my life. Everybody knows I'm not from there. And so that night led me into some chaos, right? I ends up running for my life after being assaulted in a building window. And I remember that very vividly because when I was running after I had been assaulted, when I was running for my life, I had my ID in my back pocket because I had been robbed. I skipped a whole piece of that story, y'all. Maybe we'll come back to it later, but just know that I had been robbed. And I had my ID in my back pocket. And again, I didn't know where I was at. I was just trying to get back to the guy's house that flew me out to New York. Although that wasn't the best situation, at least I knew him. I was like, let me get back to him. I remember running. It was cold. This was around like March. Okay, this was March. So to me, it was cold. I'm from Texas. To them, it wasn't cold. They was walking around in shorts in March in New York. That's crazy. But I'm running for my life, looking for this apartment building, and I prayed and I said, Lord, save me. All I said was, Lord, save me. I didn't really know God then. I grew up, going to church, but I didn't have an experience with the God of the church. I just knew to call on his name. And as I'm running, you guys, and just going, I find myself right in the same building for the guy that brought me to the city. And I don't know how it is right now, but I know at that time, in order to get inside the door, you had to either have the code or you had to have a card. The doors are locked. You can't get in. I just remember reaching in my back pocket, grabbing my ID. This was just all impulse. At the time, I thought it was impulse, but really it was God. And I slid my Texas State ID, and that door opened, y'all. That door opened. I kept it for years. It had little crinkles in it. And I got there, and he was definitely surprised that I was, out of breath. And he was saying my parents had blew him up all night, and he was so sorry that he put me out, etc. I called my parents, y'all, the next morning, and my dad answered, and he said, "What happened to you?" And I was like, "Oh, nothing." He said, "Don't lie to me." He was like, "Your mom has been up all night. She had a dream that you were sexually assaulted, cut up, and put in the trash can. And your mother was passing bowels all night. She could not move. She could not go to sleep. And I'm on my knees all night. While I was having that experience, while I was running for my life, God woke them up to pray for me. He woke them up while I was in danger. This is the power of prayer. Can I just stop right here real quick and just really shine the light on why it's so important for us to have a prayer life? Why it's so important for us to respond to the unction of the Holy Spirit. Why it's so important for us to roll over and get up and pray. That our prayers to God aren't meant to be something that we steward in a religious way just because we should do it. It is actually a tool that God gives us to communicate with him, to actually evoke change in our lives or the lives of other people. I don't know where I'd be had my parents not prayed in that moment. I don't know. And so I let them know that, yes, some things happened, but I never told them about the assault until many, many, many years later. I just couldn't bring myself to telling them about that. And they got me a first flight back. You think that that was enough, but it was not, y'all. I was so self-destructive. You know, in my logical mind, I knew the things that I was involved with or the things I was doing was wrong and it wasn't healthy for me. It wasn't going to lead me to a good place. I was spinning out of control because I was out of control in my heart, in my mind. So what was going on inside of me was reflective of what's going on out, or vice versa. What was going on outside of my life was actually what was happening inside. I was in turmoil. So my life was in turmoil. There were so many other experiences, you guys, that I faced, and all of this was 14 to 19, and I haven't even told y'all the half. But I want to go into the moment where I met God. So here's end of 2005, going into 2006. I was headed to back at home. I was 18, gonna be 19 in February of 2006. So this is December 2005. I was headed out to go and support my boyfriend, who was a local rapper here in the city, very known. And it was the New Year's party. So me and a homegirl were going, and my dad was like, Tara, do not go out. I see death at your door. My dad would always, he would always lay hands on me at night in my room. He would come in and anoint my head with oil. I would be so upset. That was that spirit in me. I was so rebellious. I was so upset that he would do that. And it just really struck me. But he would, every night, he would anoint my head with oil. And that night he said, daughter, I see death at your door. And I'm like, Dad, whatever, I left. Before I could even get to the club, the car, we were on 35 headed downtown. The car spun out of control and through traffic. And it was almost like a matrix. Like every car went around each other, like it swooped around. And we ended up gaining control of the car. I get off on the service road. I regained my composure because I saw my life flash before my eyes. And I still was like, I'm about to go turn up. Y'all, I was daring. That's why God picked me. Because, baby, look, if I was going to do a thing, I was going to do it. Now I do it for the Lord. That's why it's been 18 years and I have not turned back, and I will not. Because once I'm committed, I'm in it. So then fast forward to March 06. This is where everything changes. I find myself, you guys, flat on my back at Medical City Hospital in Dallas from a bad batch of ecstasy because I was hustling at the time and I was working, had me a administrative type of job, but I still was hustling. So I needed to stay up. So I would pop X pills and I was very used to it. But this one was like a really bad batch to the point where I started having palpitations. And normally I could come down, but that night I could not. My best friend at the time ended up taking me to the hospital. This is in the day. So this all started at night going into the next day. I knew I needed to get to the hospital because something just didn't seem right. We pull up at the hospital and they say, oh my gosh, they run an EKG. My heart rate is abnormal. They might have to even consider surgery. They don't know what they're going to have to do, but it's abnormal. While I'm laying on the hospital bed, I'm talking to my best friend at the time and I'm just like, man, I'm ready to die. I was 19, y'all. This was March of 2006. I'm just ready. I'm tired. What I was saying to her was a reflection of what I was feeling in my soul. I was tired of the rejection. I was tired of not knowing who I was. I was tired of just feeling self-hatred. I was tired of the memories of my past and things that I experienced that traumatized me from childhood up. I was just tired of life. And within a few moments, I went comatose. It's like you pass out, but the way it happened was I could hear things, but I couldn't get up. And so I just know they yelled stat. There was some commotion in the hospital room. And all I know is I see this dark whirlwind. And I felt myself disconnecting from existence. I never saw a light. I never saw a light. And in that moment, it's like God showed me my life from childhood all the way up to that moment. Things that happened to me, things that I did, good things. But it was like a movie reel, like a film. And this more intense, separated feeling started to just rise up in me to the point that now I'm panicking because I can't move. I can't get out of this. And I just felt this pull on my soul. It kind of feels like a million butterflies. You know how you get that uneasy feeling, but it's like times a million. I knew I was on my way to somewhere I wasn't going to be able to come back from. And in that moment, I heard a voice say to me, Tara, you have the option to choose life or death. In my head, I said life. And y'all, immediately, I'm laying on this hospital bed. Immediately, when I said life, my body just got up and I started to regain control of my breathing. I look around, people are startled looking at me. I'm startled. I'm regaining a sense of consciousness. And everybody's like, hey, what happened? Are you okay? I explained to my best friend at the time what happened or what I believed had happened. And then, this feeling wouldn't leave. This feeling, this voice. I heard this voice later on say, go to a church. And this didn't make sense because I'm still in the hospital. I never heard God speak, I thought, at that time. So I didn't even know God could speak at that time. Coming from a traditional religious upbringing, I didn't know God could speak. So I'm scared, but I'm also leaned into this experience because I know what just happened. So I broke out the hospital, y'all, later on. Broke out the hospital. We go, and again, this is daytime. We're looking for churches. My best friend at the time, she's with me. She's like, all right, we're going to follow this. So we're looking for churches, and no church is open. That same night, I also had a music performance. So now I'm getting frustrated because I'm like, oh, I was just hallucinating. I got to perform tonight. Forget this. She was like, no, let's just go to one last church. Mind you, we had been friends since 7th grade. We're both 19. We never prayed, never had an experience with God. But yet she's saying, let's go to one last church. I'll never forget it, y'all. It still exists today. It's called South Garland Baptist Church. We pull up. It's a predominantly Caucasian church. At the time it was. We knew it to be that. Pull up at this church, you guys. Drive around. There's nobody there. Knock on the door. There's nobody there. Now I'm pissed. I'm ticked, y'all. I am just completely upset. I was like, man, that was them drugs. I didn't hear God. That wasn't him. She was like, no, let's just get out and pray. And I'm like, what? Okay. So we get out and pray. I looked up into heaven and I said, God, I don't know you. I said, but I know that they said you parted the Red Sea. So if you just saved me from hell and you want me to give my life to you, show me you're real. Open the doors to that church. The same door that we beat on is the same door that she went and just knocked on a few times, and this white lady opens the door. Now, just imagine me at that time, like coming from the streets, not knowing what's going on. I'm like, oh my God, oh my, like, he actually did it. He real. And, I'm crying and I'm having this experience with God. And this lady's like, what do you need? She was so soft spoken. And I was like, I don't know. I just need to be. She's like, oh, I know what's going on. The church was closed, y'all. She ends up turning on the lights to the church. She lets us in and we go down to the altar. At the time, I didn't know it was called an altar, right? I was just be like, man, I went down to the table at the front of the church and I knelt down and I just started saying, God, I'm sorry, Lord, I believe you. And I'm just praying. And this heat, this heat just hit me. I never felt it before that day. This heat, it was like I felt a presence of something. Oh God, Jesus. And it was like a rushing wind of a thing. It was like this thing had just collided. This presence had just collided in my moment that I was having this experience, and I knew it was God. And so as I'm praying and I'm talking to God, God starts talking to me through me, y'all. I was prophesying to myself and I didn't know what I was doing at that time. This was nothing I was coached into. I mean, it just happened. And so my friend was sitting on the pew thinking that this was an experience with just me and God. She was just there as a support. But in that moment, I looked at her and began to prophesy to her. And I would just remember I looked at her and said, you are mine. God was speaking through me. And he said, I saved you from the night you tried to take your own life. I saved you and spared your hand, or something of that nature. Y'all, this was back in 2006. Well, guess what? While I'm saying this, I'm shocked because I didn't know that. And this is my best friend. After the fact, I find out that she tried to take her own life by way of pills while she was in college. I never knew that, you guys. So she comes running down to the altar and she gives her life to Christ. As soon as we leave, I called my family, some other things happened, and everything changed for me in that moment. That was 2006. And from that day to this one, God has chosen me and I still choose him. I just want to encourage someone to know that, first of all, your prayers are being heard by God. That God will take the most unlikely person, a person who is not even aware of themselves, and raise them up and bring them into a place of beauty. God truly gave me beauty for ashes. I want to also encourage you, those of you who have children. I have children. I got some things going on in my life, right? Just know that if he can do it for you, he definitely can do it for them. Keep praying, keep believing, keep the faith, and don't judge a book by its cover. You never know who you're talking to. You never know a person's why, and you never know a person's story. It's like Saul in the Bible, who was a murderer. God brought him into being an apostle. It's like David, who was an adulterer. God said that he was a man after his own heart. Yes, we're called to transformation, but God always starts with the rejects, those who may not know who they are, those who are even rebellious, and he renews those people and uses them for his glory. Listen, you guys, this is it for this episode. It was a bit emotional for me. I am looking forward to share more of my story because I truly believe my story is a tool in the hand of God to empower someone else, to enlighten someone else, and to really encourage someone else. And so I thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for being with me. Comment down below and let me know what you think. And until the next time, I'll see you.